Imagine you're in a hospital and a doctor makes a terrible, seemingly tiny mistake. What actually happens if they inject you with pure water instead of a properly balanced saline IV?
This isn't just some hypothetical test question. This is a real-life scenario that perfectly shows the ultimate life or death stakes of cellular transport. Because when that pure water hits your bloodstream, it doesn't just dilute your blood a little bit.
Your red blood cells will literally explode. Seriously, they will swell up and completely self-destruct. Today, we're going to uncover exactly why that cellular destruction happens and how your cells usually prevent it by acting as highly trained microscopic border control agents. By the end of this explainer, you're going to master the mechanics of how cells control exactly what enters and exits their plasma membrane. We'll break down the clear differences between passive and active transport, and you'll see exactly how these concepts apply to real-life cellular biology. So let's build this up from the ground floor.
Okay, so the easiest, most direct way across the cellular border is passive transport. And passive means the cell doesn't have to spend a single drop of energy to make it happen. The core principle here is diffusion, which is simply a substance moving from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Think of someone opening a bottle of really strong ammonia in the corner of a crowded room. At first, only the people right next to the bottle can smell it, right? But slowly, those molecules spread out until the entire room smells like ammonia. In biology, passive transport is just like floating down a river with the current. It happens totally naturally, requiring zero energy from the cell.
Now that we've got the basic idea of moving with the current, let's look at how different molecules actually get through that selectively permeable membrane, because not everything gets a free pass. For nonpolar, lipid-soluble stuff, think oxygen, carbon dioxide, fat-soluble vitamins, they slip right through the hydrophobic core of the membrane through what we call simple diffusion. But polar substances and ions, like sodium or glucose, they get repelled by that lipid core. They need facilitated transport. Basically, they need special protein doors, like channel or carrier proteins, to shield them and help them cross over. It's still passive, they're still floating down the river, they just need a special inner tube to float in. But hold on a second. This is a question that trips up a lot of people. What actually makes water move when the dissolved substances, the solutes, are just too big or too polar to get through the membrane at all? If the solutes are totally stuck on one side, how on earth does the cell balance things out?
The answer to that is osmosis. When solutes are stuck and can't diffuse across to equalize things, water basically takes matters into its own hands. Osmosis is the movement of only water through a semi-permeable membrane. The water moves from where it's highly concentrated to where there's less water, which is usually the side packed with solutes. It rushes through these special channel proteins called aquaporins just to balance the scales.
And this brings us right back to our opening medical mystery. Tonicity describes how an outside solution changes a cell's volume. In a hypotonic solution, the outside fluid has a lower solute concentration than the inside of the cell. Pure water is intensely hypotonic. So when that pure water IV hits the bloodstream, water aggressively rushes into the red blood cells to try and dilute all those solutes inside. The cell swells up, and because animal cells don't have a rigid cell wall, it bursts, or lysis. On the flip side, in a hypertonic solution, like a super salty environment, water rapidly leaves the cell, causing it to shrink and shrivel up into a little spiky ball, a process called crenation.
Now, here is a super common mistake I see all the time. If hypotonic means water rushes in, and hypertonic means water rushes out, what about an isotonic solution, where the concentrations are perfectly equal? Does that mean the water just stops moving entirely?
Definitely not. Biology is always in motion. In an isotonic solution, the cell reaches a state of dynamic equilibrium. Water is absolutely still moving in and out of the cell, but it's moving equally in both directions. The border crossing is perfectly, continuously balanced, so there's no net change in the cell's size. And that is exactly why doctors use an isotonic saline solution for IVs, to keep your cells in that perfect dynamic equilibrium. All right, let's level up here. What if the cell actually needs to go against the flow? That's active transport. Remember our river analogy? If passive transport is lazily floating down the river, active transport is swimming upstream against a roaring current. It requires burning energy, specifically ATP, to physically force substances against their concentration or electrochemical gradient. To pull off this upstream swim, the cell uses these amazing microscopic mechanical pumps, which are specific carrier proteins embedded right in the membrane.
We have three main types. A uniporter carries one specific ion or molecule in one direction. A symporter carries two different substances but moves them both in the exact same direction. And an antiporter carries two different substances but moves them in opposite directions. Let's walk through the absolute most famous antiporter pump of them all, the sodium-potassium pump. This is your classic example of primary active transport. First, the protein binds three sodium ions from inside the cell. To move them, it burns an ATP molecule, attaching a phosphate that literally forces the protein to change its shape and dump that sodium outside, totally against the gradient. Now, facing the outside, it grabs two potassium ions. As the phosphate detaches, the protein snaps back to its original shape, releasing the potassium inside the cell. By constantly pumping three positive charges out and only two positive charges in, the cell spends its ATP to maintain a really crucial electrical imbalance. But wait, this is super important. Why spend so much of the cell's precious energy doing this? Because, fun fact, most of your body's resting energy goes toward running these exact pumps. Why? To power secondary active transport. By creating this massive stockpile of sodium outside the cell, primary active transport acts just like a charged battery. As all those sodium ions desperately try to diffuse back in, they drag other crucial cargo, like glucose or amino acids, right into the cell with them through a symporter. It's an incredibly efficient system. So, channels and pumps are awesome for ions and tiny molecules. But let's shift gears for a second. What about massive cellular payloads? What if a white blood cell literally needs to swallow a whole bacteria? That is way, way too big for a tiny carrier protein. For the big stuff, we use bulk transport. When the cell needs to bring really heavy cargo inside, it uses endocytosis. This is where the plasma membrane actually folds inward, creating a little pocket that pinches off into a bubble-like vesicle. There are three flavors of this. First is phagocytosis, or cell eating, where the cell engulfs large particles or whole invaders. Second is pinocytosis, or cell drinking, taking in small gulps of fluid. And finally, receptor-mediated endocytosis. Think of this one like a VIP bouncer at an exclusive club. The cell membrane has specific receptor proteins looking for exact molecular IDs. Only when the right targeted molecule binds to the receptor does the membrane folds in, usually coated with a protein called clathrin to safely bring those VIPs inside. To really lock this concept in, let's contrast importing with exporting. With endocytosis, the membrane invaginates, meaning it folds in, forming a newly created intracellular vesicle to bring bulk material inside. Exocytosis is the exact opposite. An internal vesicle packed full of waste or newly manufactured proteins moves to the border, fuses right into the plasma membrane, opens up, and expels all its contents to the outside. It's this beautiful, continuous, dynamic reshaping of the cell's physical border. All right, before we finish up, let's quickly summarize the key takeaways from this explainer. Remember, diffusion and osmosis are completely passive, moving small molecules in water effortlessly down their gradients. Primary active transport requires burning ATP to force ions like sodium and potassium upstream against their gradients. And phagocytosis is an active form of bulk transport, moving huge macromolecules or whole cells by literally wrapping the cell membrane right around them. Now, let's connect all this back to the real world with one final provocative thought. We just talked about receptor-mediated endocytosis acting like a VIP bouncer, keeping the cell incredibly selective about what it brings inside. But what happens when that VIP bouncer gets completely tricked? Well, as it turns out, viruses are master counterfeiters. Nasty pathogens like the flu virus, diphtheria, and cholera toxin have actually evolved to cross-react with your cell's normal receptor sites. They basically flash a fake ID, tricking the cell's highly specialized endocytosis mechanisms into eagerly wrapping them up and pulling them inside. They effectively hijack your cells from within. It's kind of crazy that the very systems designed to keep the cell alive are the exact pathways exploited by disease. It's a fascinating biological reality to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Keep this incredible microscopic border war in mind, and I look forward to